All right, so today we're going to talk about 5 common issues. You might call them mistakes, I don't know, but 5 common things I see people struggling with when first starting a private practice. And I have in parentheses here how to avoid them. Now, yeah, we have a good amount to talk about today. Here's everything. These are like the talking notes. So we have some great things in store. I think by the end of the video, you'll feel a lot more empowered, a lot more confident, a lot more ready to start your private practice. And this is not going to be just for those who are looking to just start, but hopefully the things we talk about today will be impactful for those who have been in private practice for a while as well. But before we dive into that, if you've not been here before, my name is Matt. I'm a therapist in private practice. I own a group practice, and I like to make videos just like this to help other people, well, I guess other therapists, start, run, and grow a private practice. I also host a consultation community online. All of that stuff will be linked down below in the description for you to check out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk through some of this. Now, I want to make it really clear that we're never going to avoid all the mistakes, okay? And I've talked about this in a lot of videos. It's okay to make mistakes, okay? It is totally okay. It's going to happen. I've made my fair share of small, medium, and large mistakes, all right? I think one of the issues with stepping into private practice, especially for the therapists, and this is me, right? You don't have any background in business or accounting. It feels like you can't make a mistake or else things are going to crumble. You're going to do something illegal. You're going to get arrested. Yeah, that's what I felt. But the truth is, most mistakes are fixable, okay? And the other thing is, you're gonna make them, right? I know. Let's just be okay with that, all right? Now, that being said, let's talk about some of the things that people get stuck on when first starting out. All right. Now, the first thing is business entities. Okay. Now, I have a whole entire video about how to start a PLLC in the state of New York. If you want to know more about that, there'll be a link down below. But one of the common misconceptions that I see, well, there's actually 2. One is people think they need a business entity, something like a PLLC or an LLC, to get started. And now this is going to vary state to state, but in most cases, you don't need it. You're not required to have a business entity. It is a good idea. It's a good way of creating separation between you as a person and your business. It's a good way to obtain an EIN or an employer identification number, open a business bank account. If you're thinking about doing a group practice at some point in the future, it is a good idea to establish an entity sooner rather than later. But if you're someone who wants to start off really minimal, you don't want to have too many upfront costs, you're totally able to start a private practice without a business entity, right? At least that's the case here in New York. And I'm pretty sure that's the case in most other places as well. One way you do that in New York, I know that people get what's called a DBA. It's called a doing business as. This takes about 24 hours or so, costs I think $100, maybe less, and they are able to get an EIN with that. All right. Now, again, in the video I made about PLLCs, there's a lot more information, but I wanted to at least clear that up. You do not need an entity to get started. Okay. Number 2, choosing the right tools. Now, I think this is really important. There's a lot of different tools out there: Alma, Simple Practice, Headway, all these things. And now the thing that people get really stuck on is they feel like they think that these tools are like the lawmakers of private practice. Right. And I was in this boat when I first started, so for example, I joined Alma, and I started asking all these questions, like, what happens if I leave Alma? Am I allowed to? What happens if I leave Simple Practice? Am I allowed to? The truth is that all of these different tools, whether it be Alma, Simple Practice, Headway, they are just that. They are tools for your practice. You take on the weight of basically you carry the weight of knowing what you need to do in private practice. Now, of course, some of these tools can help, but think about it this way. For example, you yourself are the private practice, right? And you want to grow your practice and you want to take insurance. Alma is a great tool for that, right? They have a directory. They help you get paneled with insurance. So you then you kind of join Alma or you enroll with Alma, And now you have access to those tools. You can be on their directory, you can take insurance, but they don't tell you what to do in your private practice. They don't run your practice. You do have to abide by the rules they establish for their tools, but they're just a tool, right? The same goes with simple practice. You are the one in charge of documenting. You are the one in charge of knowing what templates to use. And simple practice is a tool that you use to be able to do that. And the problem that people usually get into is they kind of, they get stuck thinking that the tool is the one making the rule, but you're the one kind of deciding on what to do in the practice. Now, that being said, we are responsible for knowing what the laws are, what the state boards are, what, all those rules and regulations. But once we know all that, or once we're familiar with that, well, then it's up to us to decide what tools fit our practice. Okay. And that's kind of the big takeaway here. You need to understand them just as tools. Okay. Yeah. And that being said, hopefully that frees you up to think about, all these different platforms in a new way. Yeah. Okay. Not much more to say there. And so when it comes to choosing tools, I'm going to put out a video probably tomorrow with different tools that I suggest and recommend, or tools that I think would be good for you to use. If you're watching this video in the future, then be sure to check out that video. But, a couple tools that you want to consider, you definitely want an EHR, right? Somewhere you can document. You probably want to be listed on a couple directories. If you want to grow your practice, kind of quickly, or you want to take insurance, you might want to think about something like Alma or a Headway. But again, think about what you want as a practice, and then figure out what tools will help you meet those needs. Okay. Another issue people run into a lot, and I do this myself, I continue to do this at times, is jumping to conclusions. What do I mean by that? So one thing that people don't talk about enough is that private practice is an emotional roller coaster. There's ups and downs, there's good days, there's bad days, and because it's your own business, you can really feel super invested, as you should. And so, for example, you might have a week where half your caseload doesn't show up, and oh my gosh, my practice is failing. I'm not going to have a practice anymore. Oh my gosh, I got to start applying for jobs, right? Or I'm just going to go back to full-time agency work. You might have another week where you get 15 referrals, and oh my gosh, I can't handle it. I need to shut off all my panels, and I can't take any more clients. I can't handle this. It's too much. And what happens is we jump to conclusions based off how we feel. Okay. And we don't want to do that. And what I have found is that people, when they feel a certain way about their practice, they take action pretty quickly. So for example, I have 5 of my clients canceled this week. I must list myself on 10 new directories. I need to get a Google ad running. I need to do something. And we jump to conclusions really quick. Or, oh my gosh, I got 10 referrals this week. I got to shut everything off and, not take any new clients. Those things might not be the wrong thing, but we want to slow down, at least allow some time to pass, collect data. What does this actually look like over the period of time? So for example, how many clients have you lost in the last 60 days, 90 days, last month? What do the numbers really look like? And then we make decisions. All right. The other problem with this, jumping to conclusions, is we'll often compare to other therapists or other people in private practice. This is never a good idea because the comparison is never perfect. So for example, when I first started, I would look at other colleagues of mine, former colleagues who were in private practice, and they had full caseloads already, right? They'd been in private practice before I was. And so when my referrals were slow in the beginning, I would be like, why are they getting so many? And I thought something was wrong with me or my practice, but it really turns out that I hadn't had enough time for my profile to gain steam or gain traction. I had just started in private practice, so a lot of people didn't know about me being in private practice. And so it's even with the timing there, right? I wasn't able just to compare to a former colleague who'd been in private practice for a few years at this point. Not a fair comparison. So we don't want to get into the habit of comparing. This is another thing people do. But what you want to do is you want to get curious about why certain things might be the way they are. So 5 people didn't show up, or I'm not getting as many referrals this month. Rather than saying what's wrong with me or my practice, you can say, what's going on here? Is it the time of year? Is it that I do need to improve the writing on my profile? Whatever it might be, but adopt more of a curious mind. All right, don't just jump to conclusions. And this is something I see a lot. Another thing I see people kind of struggle with a little bit in private practice, especially in the beginning, is this kind of grass is always greener mentality. Now, a lot of people segueing into private practice are segueing from agency work or nonprofit or whatever it might be, right? And we all know there's issues working the standard 9 to 5, whether it be having to compete for vacation time or, feeling constrained, having to go into the office. I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues, right? And private practice has the illusion that that's going to solve all your problems and some. Now, I think that private practice is fantastic. There's so many benefits to private practice. It alleviates a lot of the stressors that come from being in an agency setting or working your standard 9 to 5, right? You can make your own hours. You can work from home. However, it does come with its own limitations and issues and downfalls. And people don't think about this that much. All right. And a couple of things that have struck me when I started my practice was working too much. I thought I'd have better work-life balance. And in all reality, I had the choice to choose better work-life balance. But because I was so invested in my practice and it was my own thing and I really cared about it, I found myself working constantly, always updating things, looking at things, checking things. And I didn't account for that, and this started over time, it takes a toll on you, right? So work-life balance can be challenging in private practice because you care so much about it. All right. You're doing your own taxes. This can be a real headache. You're most likely going to be starting to pay quarterly taxes, accounting for that on your own, and so there's a whole new layer of accounting that you're going to need to do. This is burdensome. Is this a deal breaker? No, but it's something that I wasn't thinking about and didn't account for. Ebbs and flow in pay. You no longer have this consistent paycheck, right? And there's pluses and minuses to this, but for a lot of people, the instability of it all, it's somewhat unpredictable depending on the seasons. You got to think a lot about how to, how to keep a consistent pay. How are you going to make money in private practice and keep it sustainable? There are ebbs and flows. All right, people don't like that. It's a little bit more risky than being in an agency where you have the consistent paycheck. All right, so I just wanted to highlight a couple issues that I do see with private practice that are often overlooked because of the grass is greener mentality. And then another issue I see people running into is trying to figure things out that are just outside of the scope of their own expertise. So, for example, when starting a private practice, I'm a huge proponent of consulting with at least a lawyer and an accountant. The attorney will help you with all your, what do you need to do? Like what forms do you need? They can give you an intake packet for clients. They can help you ensure that you're following all the laws, rules, and regulations for your state. They can help you set up business entities, on and on and on. Okay. That's what they do. An accountant can help with business entities as well. They'll help you understand how to sign up for, in your state to help pay taxes online. They'll help with a bunch of stuff. And what I see is a lot of therapists trying to figure this out on their own without consulting the people they should consult. Now, I know the aversion to this and perhaps the barrier is the cost. It does cost money to consult with an attorney or an accountant. And this can be prohibitive for some people. And in that case, we have to do what we have to do, right? We have to do the research, make ends meet. But for those of us who are avoiding it because we just don't want to do it or we think it's not a worthwhile investment, I want to assure you that I've never regretted a consultation call ever, whether it be to a lawyer or an accountant. I always leave feeling more at peace, knowing what I need to do. So for example, when I was trying to figure out what kind of business entity do I need, I consulted an accountant who knew about this stuff, and they were able to point me in a direction, give me reasons for why, and it was a great decision. And I feel I wouldn't have been able to really fully make that on my own. It confirmed what I had researched, but I really wanted that accountant to help me solidify what I researched and say, yeah, that's right. This is why you should do X, Y, Z. All right. Now you can consult. Again, I encourage people, accountant, lawyer at minimum when starting. Not to mention you'll need to contact those kinds of professionals at some point in your private practice journey. You do want a working relationship with both of those two kinds of professionals. You can even consult with an HR professional. So I actually did that before starting my group practice. Do I need an employee manual? What do I need from an HR perspective? And so being able to consult with other professionals, it's always a worthwhile investment if you're able to do it. Okay, so I hope that these 5 areas that I see people, kind of struggling with or stumbling in, this gives you a little more clarity and helps you out a little bit. And I hope you learned something. I hope you found this video helpful. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.